Working? Cool. Oh yeah, as mentioned, Carolina couldn't come, so I've been preparing since this morning, so I'll see how good I can do, but yeah, hopefully it goes well. Yeah, so I guess, yeah, it's been covered a bit what we'll talk about today, but yeah, I'll be going through the following. So the gaps in animal advocacy as we have evaluated ourselves, how starting a charity could fill these gaps, and then how charity entrepreneurship could help you to start these charities. So I'll go a bit through what we offer and whether you can evaluate whether you're a good fit to come through our program and start a charity. And then, yeah, a bit more detail on how we can help you have more impact for animals and how we've helped previous organizations in the past. So yeah, I thought we'd start with a more meta question. And yeah, do you think that we are currently moving towards a better world? Is things progressing well? I guess, yeah, there's many metrics where we can say yes. Inequalities are falling, the burden of disease is falling, child mortality is falling, disease burdens are falling, but I guess maybe everyone in this room kind of knows, unfortunately, maybe the trend isn't similar for animals. Of course, we have had a lot of big wins. I'm not saying we're not doing anything. Obviously, and I guess it's very familiar to a lot of people in this room, we've had a lot of corporate campaign successes, so lots of cage-free wins, pledges from thousands of corporations. We're making good progress on plant-based meat. So 9 of the 50 largest fast food chains in the US are now selling plant-based meat. We've had some legislative and litigation wins. So again, many of you familiar in Europe know that Europe have now banned to stop the cage age and had bans on inhumane slaughter. We've had a few other corporate wins, and we're now moving our attention from these cage-free campaigns, maybe towards fish, maybe towards broiler chickens. So we are progressing as a movement. But as I mentioned, the numbers of animals alive anytime is still growing very rapidly. So yeah, our movement is still small, and as the industry grows, it maybe is becoming an even smaller portion of how fast that is growing, and so a lot more work is needed. And yeah, these problems are still far from solved. There's a lot of gaps still in the space. So as we can see from this, a lot of where farmed animals are most farmed is in countries like China, India, Indonesia, in Asia, whereas I guess previously as a movement we've more focused in the West, so in the US or in Europe, which makes up a much smaller percentage of where the animals are farmed. So as you can see, there's quite a few gaps, and so where are these gaps? So one way is looking at cost effectiveness. So the average charity might not be as cost effective as I guess maybe a lot of the charities in this room that are doing cage-free campaigns. And that's one big shift, I guess, that we're seeing now, thanks to the effective altruism movement. We are kind of moving more towards the bigger wins rather than focusing on stray animals and things like this. We're moving more towards farmed animals, and that's a good way to move up in cost effectiveness on this graph. Yeah, and now I'll talk a bit about how we have come to identify some gaps. So I'll just talk briefly about our research process. So basically, our goal in charity entrepreneurship is to identify gaps and then help people start charities to fill these gaps. But how do we identify these gaps? So it's a 10-month process. It starts very early on by brainstorming with other animal advocates, any gaps that they might see, any work that they think would like to be done in their country or in other countries that they might want to expand to. So we end up with quite a few, 200, 300 ideas at this early stage. And then each of these ideas kind of goes through an iterative process where we're starting to rule out the less promising ideas and focusing more time and effort in the more promising ideas. So I guess the kind of things we focus on here is cost effectiveness, as the last slide alluded to, but also I guess a lot of people that are familiar with effective altruism will probably be sick of hearing these things, but scale, neglectedness, and tractability is also what we look into, and then also geographic assessments. So it might be the case that we're doing really well on cage-free campaigns in Europe and the US, but maybe we're seeing less precedent in Asia. So maybe we can even transfer our existing campaigns to other geographies where they're currently not being used as much. And then at the end of this like iterative process where we spend more and more time looking into different intervention ideas, this ends in a recommendation of 3 to 5 ideas that we then recommend people start through our incubation program. So that's the research process in brief. I am like the main animal researcher at Charity Entrepreneurship. So if you have like more specific questions about our research process and want to dig a bit more into depth, maybe you can ask me in the Q&A at the end or grab me at some point. So I guess going back to the typical EA concepts, we think that a high priority problem and how we identify gaps is that they're big, so high scale, solvable or tractable, and we think this can break down into 3 different areas. So they're cost effective, based on evidence or case studies. So again, cage-free has worked in Europe and the US, maybe it can work in other geographies, and then they have a strong theory of change. And also that they're neglected. So I guess, as I kind of alluded to at the start, we've done a lot of work currently in the US and Europe, but we can see China, India, Indonesia, there's a lot of places that, you know, organizations are starting to crop up, which is great, but yeah, there can be a lot more done. So yeah, I thought I'd zoom in first on high scale and how we've used this in the past to come up with a charity idea. So I guess, we tend to prioritize, even as a movement, we've moved from things like pigs in farrowing crates, which was one of the first victories we had as a movement, to, I guess, what we're working on now, removing chickens from cages and the better chicken commitment. Maybe we can take this one step further, and a few people are. Like the Humane League in the UK had their talk today about how they're doing work for fish, and there are more organisations focusing on fish. But then maybe we can take it one step further and look at shrimp, which are farmed in ridiculous numbers each year. So that's kind of where we ended up. We saw this scale and thought we should probably be doing something about this. So we helped to start Shrimp Welfare Project, and I think a few of you were in the room just as Andreas was talking about Shrimp Welfare Project. But so we incubated them last year, and they are the first organisation focusing exclusively on improving the welfare for shrimp. And the main reason why we thought that this was an important topic for an organisation to focus on is just the scale is huge. 350 billion shrimps are farmed per year, and that's 5 times the total number of all farmed land animals put together. So when you put that into perspective and you see, this like immense amount of suffering is happening and so many animals are being farmed and no one is working on it, it seemed like an obvious reason to start a charity in this space. The next thing I'll zoom in on, how we make a decision, is that it's solvable or that it's tractable. So Fish Welfare Initiative was incubated in 2019, so it's been around a bit longer and is probably a bit more well known than Shrimp Welfare Project. And Tom gave a talk yesterday. So they were incubated in 2019, and their work is to improve the welfare of farmed fish through working with farmers. So they have identified a solvable and tractable issue in water quality, and now they're trying to figure out how to make improvements in that space. So they've zoned in on one particular issue that they think is most important and solvable, and now they're working to improve fish welfare through this lens. They primarily work in India, and over the 3 years that they've been working in India, they've estimated to help 615,000 fish and 1.4 million shrimp. You might be thinking, why are shrimp there? They're not Shrimp Welfare Project. Shrimp and fish are usually farmed together in India by low welfare farmers, so that's how they've managed to sneak in a few shrimp helped as well. I guess, as I was alluding to, there is a lot more work to be done in this space, and we think this is a potential gap that we might want to help people start a charity around. So more work on fish welfare. So similar to Shrimp Welfare Project, Fish Welfare Initiative back in 2019 was one of the first organizations focusing exclusively on fish welfare. And, there are more organizations cropping up that are doing this good work. But they're they're focusing on one country. And when you think of how many fish are farmed, it seems kind of ridiculous that we can be like, oh, they've got it covered. Fish Welfare Initiative are just working in India. There's many fish elsewhere, so we think that it could be good to have more work on fish welfare. And these could include interventions similar to Fish Welfare Initiative, so ensuring good water quality. Basically what that means is improving dissolved oxygen levels so the shrimp can breathe properly and they're not suffering from things like this. Lowering stocking densities, so fish can be farmed like very closely together, and even fish that are like more solitary species like salmon are farmed like in really tight conditions, and that could like increase aggression, and is also makes other welfare issues worse because they're more stressed. There's things like disease and parasite management, humane slaughter, which is something that if you went to the Humane League UK's talk before, something that they're interested in addressing, and then better handling and transport to the slaughterhouse. I've kind of touched on this. We have a few recommended countries where we'd like to see organizations work in this space, and are hoping to find people who might want to go through our program and do something similar to this. So working in Indonesia and the Philippines, we kind of chose these countries based on the number of fish farmed, but also the availability of talent in these countries. And then we might also see, as I mentioned, fish are farmed in a lot of countries. So there's other countries such as Egypt, the EU, Norway, so maybe if we find a founder that has more preference to work in these countries, that could be a good reason to favour these countries, and also might help differentiate yourself from the work that Fish Welfare Initiative are doing in India. So maybe you don't want to work in another Asian country, maybe you want to work in Latin America or the EU or something like this. And I guess there's a lot of different approaches that are being explored by a few different organisations. So you could work at the farmer level, similar to Fish Welfare Initiative, like working directly on the ground with farmers who are day-to-day farming fish, helping them improve their water quality through things like aerators or feed management. You might do, I guess, the one that we're more familiar with as an animal movement, working at the corporation level. I think there are some challenges with that, especially in the countries where fish are more farmed, the places like Asia, where the corporate structure might not be similar to what we're familiar with in the EU. Or you could work at the government level. So it's very rare that any countries, even inside the EU or the UK or the US, have any fish welfare legislation. So even in countries that we're already familiar working with, there's a lot of work that could be done for fish. And then I'll zoom in to one of the final lenses that we use to pick our charities, and that's neglectedness. So we've identified banning low welfare imports as a particularly neglected area. It may not come as a surprise, but welfare standards differ across countries, and some high welfare countries such as New Zealand, the UK or the EU are importing animal products from conditions that aren't legal in their countries, and we think that this is quite an obvious welfare issue that could be addressed, and it's also one that's, I guess, unusually beneficial for farmers. So I guess usually we're somewhat in competition with farmers, but this one can be quite tractable because farmers support it as well. We've identified this as an area where we'd like to see a new charity founded, potentially working in New Zealand, in the UK. So I thought just to give you like an example of what we might be able to achieve with this. So looking closer into poultry meat, so that's broiler chickens in New Zealand. So New Zealand has a stocking density of 38 kilograms per meter squared for chickens. That's like the legal standard. But then they import 58% of their chicken meat from Thailand, where there's just no legislation on what stocking density should be. So we could only imagine how high stocking densities and how bad welfare might be in these countries. And if we implemented an import ban, then we would only import this meat from Thailand if they met this 38 kilograms per meter squared stocking density limit. So that could be one way to help improve welfare in these lower welfare countries without working in them directly. So, as I've been saying, we need new organizations working on these problems, and we're hoping to help you start them. But maybe you're asking, why should I even start a new charity? So I thought I'd address that with a case study of Fish Welfare Initiative. We think that you can have a huge impact, and I hope that a lot of you are aware of the work of Fish Welfare Initiative and can agree that they are having a good impact in this space. When you start an organization, you're like two founders working on basically everything, so you can build career capital very well. Like you get to try different things, and you have to be skilled in everything. So it's like invaluable hands-on experience. And then you can also do good better. So moving resources and attention to more important problems directly yourself. So how can you start a new charity? I guess this is where my plug starts. So at Charity Entrepreneurship, we do help you start new charities. So we run our incubation program, and this is basically a 2-month training program where we find people to start the ideas that we've spent 10 months of the year researching. And we basically bring you on and train you on how to start an organization. I'd talk a bit more about our track record. We've existed since 2018. We've run 3 formal incubation programs since then, and we currently have our 4th going on now. We've started 18 effective nonprofits over both human health and animal welfare, reaching over 5 million humans and improving the lives of 1.2 million animals so far. 5 of these 18 organizations have been focused on animal welfare specifically. So what do you actually get through going through the program? So you get a charity idea. So as I mentioned, we have like a quite in-depth research process where we've identified really promising gaps that we think you could address. So you don't have to have your own idea to start a charity. You can come to us. We think we've got pretty good ideas, pretty good bets on something that could be promising. So we give you this. You also find a co-founder through the program. So you don't have to come with someone in mind that you want to start a charity with. We basically recruit people who are interested in starting a charity, and you do group projects with everyone on the program and find people that you're especially interested in working with, and then you come out of the program with a co-founder. We also give you seed funding. So at the end of the program, our average seed funding for the charities that are founded is about 100K. So that could be like the first 6 months to a year of operations covered whilst you figure out what you're actually going to do on the ground, so you don't have to worry about fundraising straight away. We also offer mentorship. So a year after our incubation program is run, we will offer weekly calls where we kind of help you out on all the struggles you might be having with setting up your charity. So it's not like we give you this idea, put you through the training program, and then just push you out the door and tell you, go and solve the problem. We will actually help you in doing that. And then I think importantly as well, we also have like a community of charity entrepreneurs. So Fish Welfare Initiative, Shrimp Welfare Project, Healthier Hens, Animal Advocacy Careers, and Animal Ask. Those are the 5 animal welfare charities that we've helped found in the past. And they'd you become in a community with them, and they can help you with any similar issues that they might have faced in the past that you're facing now. So you're not going to go alone through this process, which I think is could be the case if you were just starting a charity by yourself. So I guess I'll zoom in a bit on what the program might actually look like. So a typical day in the program would start with like a short video lecture on one of these topics, so measurement and evaluation, basic statistics, task management, things like this. And then so it's a short video at the start of the day, and then you will do a group project putting these things into practice. So you'll watch a video at the start of the day on how to build a budget, and then you'll do a group project with one of the potential co-founders who are also on the program on actually making a budget. So like very quickly implementing your learnings to, I guess, help you learn better. And then that kind of repeats in the afternoon, so it's another video and another project. So it's like quite an intensive, I guess, learning process in the first month of the program. But as this first month goes on, you start narrowing down the co-founders that you're most interested in working with. So the people you like the most, the people you work well with, work the best with. You'll start narrowing down and working on projects exclusively with them. And then in the second month, you'll actually work exclusively with one person on the idea that you're most interested in working in. And it's basically a month trial run of working with that person on the charity idea that you're most interested in starting. So like a month trial run of actually running a charity before you're like thrown out into the world, just to check, you actually want to work with this person and you're actually ready to start charity. So those are the kinds of things we offer, but how do you know if you're a good fit? So I guess these are some of the common traits that we see in the people that have gone through the program in the past. So you're ambitiously altruistic. I think it's fair to say that everyone in this room is. So you're maximizing your impact with an aim to make the world a better place and make it, improve the world as much as you possibly can. So consequentialism, which means you're results orientated and have a high level of integrity and commitment to actually improving the lives of the animals that you're setting out to help. So I guess as you might expect, you're more entrepreneurial, so more risk-taking, more agile and lean and flexible, and happy to try things out, and if they fail, not be upset by that, learn from it and move on and try something else. I guess scientific, so you believe that evidence base is very important, and the evidence is one of the most useful things to coming to key conclusions. And then that you're, I guess, just generally warm and caring and want to make the world a better place. But I guess these are a lot of, everybody wants to be these things, I guess, but nobody is perfect, and I think that's fine. I guess a few facts. So 50% of the founders that have gone through their program didn't even think that they should apply because they didn't think they'd be a good fit, so don't doubt your potential. Nobody comes into the program qualified to start a charity. So we don't only accept people that have founded charities before. The whole point of our incubation program is to train you on how to start a charity. So just because you haven't even run your own project before or something like that, I don't think that's a ruling out factor. We're here to train you on how to do these things. I guess I've somewhat mentioned this. The base traits that make a good charity entrepreneur include grit, intelligence, resourcefulness, a focus on outcomes, and a commitment to making a real difference. And then for most people, the highest impact time to start a charity is right now. So I guess you might be thinking, oh yeah, this seems something that's good to do in a few years when I've got a bit more experience. But I guess, what I'd say is the best experience you can gain from running trying to start a charity is actually going out and trying. So do it now. So again, I'll just touch on what we've done so far. I've mentioned Shrimp Welfare Project and Fish Welfare Initiative in a bit more depth, but we've also helped start a few more charities. So Animal Advocacy Careers, they are focused on improving talent pipelines in the animal advocacy space. So basically they're running introduction fellowships, what does working in animal welfare look like, to try and bring people who aren't familiar with the movement into the movement to fill some talent gaps, but also help address talent gaps by providing training and things like this. Animal Ask, again, a few of you might have already heard George talk about it in the previous talk, but basically they're doing research and helping organizations choose the most impactful ask that they can work on. So, a lot of organizations are moving now from doing cage-free and they're thinking, what next? Animal Ask, I guess, is trying to help them answer that question in their country-specific context. And then Healthier Hens. So Lucas gave a talk at one of the lightning talks yesterday introducing healthier hens. But basically, as hens move from cage-free housing, as their egg-laying demand is so high and requires a lot of calcium, this calcium is kind of leached from their bones. And what that means is that their legs is very weak. They usually have leg fractures. And what this means when they move out of cages is that maybe they can't walk around, they can't access food, and that's obviously very bad. So it's great that they've been removed from cages, but there is a lot more welfare issues to address. And Healthier Hens basically is trying to address this calcium deficiency which causes these fractures by improving the quality of laying hen feed, so improving, supplementing it with calcium and other essential nutrients. And I talked a bit about Shrimp Welfare Project, but they're basically focusing on helping farm shrimp in India and Vietnam, again, taking the farmer level approach similar to Fish Welfare Initiative. So I guess that's my plug. If you're interested in starting a charity, there's a few things you can do. So this is our website. There's a quiz on our website that basically you can take to see whether you would be a good fit for the program. I guess that could be a good way of testing your fit if you're not entirely sure. And then if you do take the quiz, there's some suggested resources of areas to improve based on how you answered the quiz. So it could be that you take the quiz, you don't get a great score or whatever, and then you read the resources, you could take it again, and then you might be better equipped to apply. And then, yes, our next incubation program will be focused on animal welfare charity ideas. So I guess I alluded to a few of them in the talk, but they will be focused on things like improving fish welfare, banning low welfare imports. So if that sounds interesting, then maybe you'll want to apply. You can also apply with your own idea. I guess it's a bit more unusual that people come through our program with their own idea, but it's not, you don't have to start our idea. Basically, I guess, we've done a lot of research into the ideas that we recommend, so if you do have your own idea that you want to come with, I guess we'd be expecting you to have the same level of research into your idea. But it's not a ruling out factor that we wouldn't take you onto the program if you had your own idea. So applications open at the start of October, so if you're interested in that, then look out for that application date. There's also like a newsletter sign up on our website, so you don't have to keep that date in your head. If you sign up to our newsletter, we'll remind you when the application's open. Yes, thank you. Looking forward to your questions. Here are some happy charity entrepreneurs.
Thank you so much. We do already have some questions, but in the meantime, please make sure to go on the Eventory app and ask more questions. We will start with the first one. Vicky, are you concerned that the use of the term human slaughter and the promotion of it can have adverse effect in the holistic efforts of trying to reduce animal farming and suffering?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I guess there are some concerns about humane washing and things like this. I guess looking at the evidence into these things, it doesn't really seem like it does affect purchasing behavior. So I guess that's a positive update that maybe these things wouldn't affect how consumers actually act. And I guess it is a problem that we want to address. So I guess it does, I don't think that should be a reason to not do it. I think maybe that should just be a reason to improve our framing. And I think maybe even people already expect the standards to be higher than they are, so maybe they don't even know that animals aren't slaughtered, like aren't stunned before slaughter, and when they are, that might just be like the base level that they would have assumed anyway. I think it could be a concern, but I'm not as concerned based on, I guess, the track record so far.
Sure, thank you. Does shrimp feel pain the same way as fish, birds, and mammals?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And I guess Andreas kind of dodged this earlier by telling you to just assume shrimp are sentient. I think that is a good question. I do think we have some evidence suggesting that they do feel pain, and I'd say the areas where we don't have evidence is just that people haven't really studied these things yet, not that, there's like no negative evidence, it's more of an absence of evidence, if that makes sense. I think it is quite likely that they do feel pain, and given like their large scale, even if we did discount the fact that maybe they're slightly less sentient or they slightly feel less pain than fish, just there's like so many more of them, even if you did discount that, then it still looks promising to work on them.
What is the biggest gap at the moment in animal advocacy space?
It's a good question. I guess I kind of alluded to it in my talk. I think as a movement, we have been good at moving towards where more suffering happens. So like I said, we've moved from like things like trying to ban farrowing crates to trying to ban cages, which affects many more animals. There's way more chickens than there are pigs. And I think we could have a similar multiplying of impact again if we move to fish. I think there are some open questions. There still is suffering in chickens, especially broiler chickens, which is like more new what we're doing campaigns on. But I think if there could be more focus on fish, that would be good. There's a lot of fish and no one's really trying to figure out how to help them yet. So that would probably be like my best guess. If you could do something better right now, it might be to like shift your focus a bit more to fish.
Why making more charities instead of doing campaigns under existing charities to minimize under administration costs?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess we are somewhat trying to lower the administrative costs by helping you, like, how to set up a charity. And I guess, yeah, another thing could be, like, existing charities already have campaigns that they're working on, and their expertise are working on these things. So it might not make as much sense to have someone who's, yeah, come from a background of cage-free campaigns just, like, completely switch their focus and work on fish. Like on the farm, maybe it's better to like find people and train them up on how to do that specifically. And I guess new charities can be a bit more agile. Like if you're an existing organization, you know, maybe you've got to convince everybody in your organization to move to work on fish welfare when people feel like they're having successes and, you know, maybe are more passionate about working on chickens. Whereas if, yeah, you can start a new organization, you maybe don't have some of that like upfront burden of like switching, if that makes sense.
Does charity entrepreneurship also support animal rights projects or only animal welfare projects?
Yeah, so I guess, yeah, we are quite focused on evidence, so, and like a good theory of change. So if you have these things, yeah, I guess, yeah, as I was saying, you like, we have done our research into these ideas, and if you like have a similar amount of research into those kind of projects, then cool. And I think, yeah, it could be good to take a diversified approach, but I guess, yeah, generally we have focused more on these welfare things just because they've been more studied in the past. But yeah, if you did have more upfront research on these things, then yeah, it wouldn't be a ruling out factor, like I said.
You were speaking of evidence-based approach. Is there evidence that that better welfare for fish or other animals lead people to consume less animals?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think doing work to improve welfare on like these more neglected animals could make people like think a bit more about their suffering. So it could be some awareness raising for these kind of issues and maybe make people think a bit more about their like consumption habits. So things like Seaspiracy, I think like loads of even my non-vegan friends watch Seaspiracy and see like all the horrible things that happen to fish and then have like reduced their fish consumption because of it. I think maybe something similar could happen by raising awareness of the welfare issues that we're trying to correct. I guess it isn't as obvious a theory of change as just telling people to not eat these animals. And I think that's like could be a good approach and something like an approach that some people should take. But I guess it takes a long time to change people's behaviour. And I guess in the short term, it's good to improve their welfare, whilst they're still suffering. I guess with the eventual goal that hopefully they won't be on farms at some point. But the fact that they're going to be on farms probably for quite a while longer, I think there are issues to address.
How to prioritize between what campaigns to do first? Easy change for many individuals or difficult to change, but helping far more individuals in the end?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question and something that we looked into a bit when we recommended Shrimp Welfare Project. So if you were here for Andreas's talk, he kind of mentioned eye stalk ablation. So this is like a really horrible practice where basically like one of the eye stalks of female shrimp is like cut or severed, basically because scientists have found that there's a hormone in these eye stalks which helps them produce more eggs and produce eggs on demand. So farmers make these incisions or cut the eye stalks off to produce more shrimp in the long term. And this is like a really horrific practice, but it only affects like the female shrimp and like the brood stock shrimp. So these aren't shrimp that people will go on to eat. These are just the shrimp that make the shrimp that people eat. So there's fewer of them. So I guess, there's a trade-off to be made here where we could work on eye stalk ablation, which might be an easier win because I think anybody that hears this practice happens is going to be like horrified and wish that it didn't. So it could be an easy win on that front where nobody really wants it to happen. But then again, it like affects fewer individuals. So then, we did favour like the more on the farm welfare improvements, which could affect more shrimp. So I guess that sort of answers your question in a roundabout way.
In the slide with how far are we from solving the problem, Can you explain what the numbers in the percentage means? How to know when a problem is 49% solved?
Right, yes, that might have been a bit deceptive. So the percentages I had is basically like the percentage of animals that are slaughtered or used for food or their animal products in that country. So China has like, you know, nearly 50% of all animals farmed, and the US maybe only has, like a much lesser percentage of the animals farmed. So yeah, I guess that slide was trying to get at, you know, we've worked in the US previously, but that's like a much lower percentage of the total animals farmed. So maybe we should shift our attention to the countries where there's more animals.
Does charity entrepreneurship support food tech projects? I believe still in animal welfare.
Yeah, that's a good question, and something that we have asked ourselves as well. Again, I don't think we'd rule it out, but yeah, I guess maybe one concern that we might have with incubating food tech projects is that's like not really our area of expertise. So yeah, on the team we have focused more on welfare in the past, so maybe our advice might not be as useful to food tech, and I guess especially we're like specifically looking at charities, whereas food tech is usually like actually going out and starting a company, so the like advice might be slightly different. So maybe you could be better placed by like going to the Good Food Institute or ProVeg or things like this that have like a more explicit focus on food tech. But again, not ruling it out, just I don't know if that's where our comparative advantage would be, like in terms of our training.
Is the Healthier Hands charity decreasing the number of animals suffering, or just decreasing the level of suffering for the existing animals?
Yeah, good question. So I think a bit of both. I think the main impacts is decreasing the suffering of the animals that are existing on farms right now. I think, it could help to reduce the number of animals farmed in total, just because, I guess as I mentioned, these fractures happen and mean that these animals can't get to their food or their water, and obviously that ends up in them dying. So this could help to reduce mortality levels. So then maybe if we reduce mortality levels, fewer layer hens could be like purchased at the start of the production cycle if we expect the mortality levels to be less. I guess because we're hoping to have the same egg output. If we're having chickens dying, then we need to have more chickens to produce the same number of eggs. But if we can reduce mortalities, which I think this intervention could, through things like, actually chickens being able to reach their food and water, then, I think that could overall reduce the number of chickens that are farmed in the system. But I do think you're right to, spot that most of the welfare improvement comes from, the suffering on the farm.
That was the last question. Thank you so much. And once again, please, a great round of applause.